Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to all. I'm very pleased to have such a wide panel of journalists for our press conference. I'm equally happy to introduce to you a relatively unique and frontline here. On my left, I'm happy to introduce Sébastien Surin, Ambassador of France, and France is currently holding the presidency of the European Council. Christophe Boyko, Ambassador of Poland, Valentin Angelov, Chargé d'Affaires for Bulgaria, Christophe Malone, Ambassador of the United Kingdom, Michael Kanjiski, who is Ambassador of the United States, and Laura Botta, Ambassador of Italy. On my right, I have Jan Vitopil, Ambassador of the Czech Republic, Catherine Ivkov, Ambassador of Canada, Regina Huttenberg, who is Chargé d'Affaires for the Embassy of Germany, and Adam Hassaj, for the Embassy of Hungary. So a very heartfelt welcome to everyone. We felt that it was important for us to express our views on the war of aggression of Russia to Ukraine in a common, united way. You have here all the representatives from our EU member state. I'm myself, Axel Nikes, Ambassador of the European Union to Mongolia, as well with the support of our like-minded partner from the USA, UK, and Canada. This press conference will be articulated in two moments. First, every one of us, we will take the floor for 3 minutes to explain our views on the war of aggression of Russia against Ukraine, but also highlighting some particular moment for each of us that we wish to draw to your attention and to the Mongolian public as well. The second part will be, we will take a couple of questions from the audience. So on my own part, I wish to recall that the European Union has been condemning in the strongest possible terms the unprovoked invasion of Ukraine by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. We have also condemned the involvement of Belarus in this aggression against Ukraine. Russia bears full responsibility of the aggression against Ukraine and its people. The Russian occupation forces are violated international law, international humanitarian law, and committing war crimes in Ukraine. Those are documented. On the package of sanctions, I wish also to draw to your attention that the European Union member states have been extraordinarily united in supporting Ukraine. And this was translating in a continuous isolation of Russia with the largest sanction package in our history. This entails massive sectoral sanction as well as individual listings. At the moment, we are speaking about 5 packages of sanctions, which are targeting 877 individuals from Russia and Belarus, as well as 62 entities. Those measures were closely coordinated with our partner and allies, the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Norway, South Korea, Japan, Australia. In total, over 40 countries have partially or completely aligned with our sanction. The sanction impose huge costs on the aggressor, but we also prepare to have a cost for the European economy itself. There will be spillover effect, but we are prepared to impose further measures, including additional economic and individual sanction. Our assistance in Ukraine, I wish to draw 2 points here. Our humanitarian assistance, at the moment, since the annexation, illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014, we have spent on the EU budget over 17 billion euro in support of Ukraine as humanitarian assistance. And on the 1st of March, President von der Leyen had announced an additional 500 million euro to deal with the immediate consequence of the war, including the refugees. Another important aspect of our support is our military aspect. On the peace facility, I want to draw to your attention that on the 27th of February, in other terms, 3 days after the invasion of Russia, the member states of the European Union have agreed to supply military equipment to help the Ukrainian armed forces. It's an overall cost of 500 million euro, $500 million dedicated to lethal and non-lethal equipment. We are currently discussing about the second package of an equal amount of 500 million euro in lethal and non-lethal equipment to support the Ukrainian armed force. In conclusion, I have a last word on the strategic compass, which is a strategic document that has been adopted by the Minister of National Defense and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the European Union, who is upscaling and detailing what are our strategic vision to build up a stronger and more capable EU in the field of security and defense. This will be our work plan now for the next 5-10 years. We call it the strategic compass, and it's our vision for security and defense for the next 10 years, complementary to the NATO, which remain the basis of our collective defense security for the partner countries in Europe. Thank you. I will pass now the floor to Sébastien Surin.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. What makes these conflicts so important is not only the security issue, which was just mentioned, but also the attack on the principle of sovereignty. 30 years ago, Ukraine, just like Mongolia, decided to recover their full sovereignty and to go along a path of democracy and open economy. You may also remember that in 1994, Russia guaranteed Ukraine security. It's called the Budapest Agreement, in exchange for which Ukraine stopped stockpiling and having Soviet nuclear weapons on its territory. And now Russia is the one attacking Ukraine instead of guaranteeing its security. It is a war that started a short while ago, but it is also a war that started many years ago. 8 years ago, you may remember that Ukraine was attacked and a part of its territory, Crimea, was annexed by Russia. 2 months ago, Russia attacked Ukraine again, and now Mr. Putin and his regime even challenged the existence of a Ukrainian nation. We understand why this issue resonates so much in a country like Mongolia, which is rightly proud of its own sovereignty, its independence, and we all remember last year the celebration of 60 years of membership of Mongolia in the United Nations. That is what we mean by sovereignty, and that is what is being attacked now. This is why so many nations here, and as mentioned by Ambassador Nikkei's, also aligning with sanctions regime, so many nations share the feelings of Mongolia about their own sovereignty. Let me mention now how that translates. We feel many countries have unduly been collateral victims of the economic consequences of the war, and I insist of the war, not of sanctions. Because the Russian army invaded a large agriculture exporter, because the Russian Navy blocked the ports and threatened merchant ships in the Black Sea, food prices have gone up everywhere, including here. Because of Russia's aggression, oil prices have gone up everywhere, including here. Because of Russia's war in Ukraine, countries like Mongolia suffer from tensions on the foreign exchange markets. Because Russia has decided to ban its own exports, it is now difficult for countries like Mongolia to buy from Russia fertilizer, food inputs, or even railway equipment. So what do we do? First of all, we are standing on the side of Mongolia to find solutions and help with Mongolia's supplies. France and other countries have launched an initiative called the FARM Mission, Food and Agriculture Resilience Mission. It helps to bring more transparency on markets. It helps to have more transparency in trading and supply world markets. It also enhances access to commodities, and it aims at strengthening food production in the very short term and in the long term. Again, we feel these issues resonate very much in the debate which we have observed and participated in Mongolia about food security, about Mongolia having its own food production, not being reliant on imports for food. So we work together, and we have been working together for a long time with Mongolia on food security, also on the autonomy of energy supplies, and there are solutions to have Mongolia as autonomous as possible. We also engaged Mongolia's business sector very early, even before the beginning of the war, to make sure that sanctions against Russia's regime would not affect Mongolia. We also speak out for sovereignty, for our security, so that we address this crisis together with the whole international community. And we very much appreciate that Mongolia is an active member of the United Nations. Mongolia is also a member of the OSCE, and these are the multilateral fora where we feel any issue of security should be addressed, not on a battlefield as it is now the case in Ukraine. I thank you.
Thank you. I pass the floor to Jan Vitopil, Ambassador of the Czech Republic.
Thank you very much. I'm the new ambassador of the Czech Republic here in Ulaanbaatar, so it's my first opportunity to meet all of you. Thank you very much for coming. I want to stress that the Czech Republic is and will support Ukraine in its war against the Russian aggression. We are also helping the Ukrainian refugees, of which we have at least 300,000, probably much more at our territory. And we will be delivering Ukraine humanitarian aid as well as armament to help them to defend themselves from the Russian aggression. Another thing which I would like to notice is that the International Criminal Court has started an investigation against the war crimes of Russia on the territory of Ukraine. And I understand that almost over 40 countries has already started the procedure as well and appealed at the International Criminal Court. Another thing which I would like to mention for the Czech Republic is extremely important to work with democratic countries, which is the case of Mongolia. And we will try to help as much as possible in the current situation Mongolia is. We have just last week reopened our borders to any travels, including trade. And we are working on keeping the trade routes open as they run mostly through Russia. Thank you very much. And I would like to stress again, Czech Republic is and will be supporting Ukraine in its war against Russian aggression. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. Krzysztof Bojko, Ambassador of Poland.
Krzysztof Bojko, Ambassador of Poland. Good morning to everybody. Poland is the only country in the European Union to share borders together with Ukraine and Russia. As a representative of a country which, after Russia's aggression against Ukraine, has welcomed millions of refugees from Ukraine, I would like to speak on this subject. There is no doubt about that the sole actor responsible for the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine, as well as for the fear, suffering, and tears of millions of innocent and defenseless people, is Russia. Poland, both the state and the society, stand in solidarity with invaded Ukraine. Till yesterday, it means till April 12th, out of over 10 million people who fled from Ukraine, we have accepted almost 2,700,000 Ukrainian refugees, probably more than any other country in the world. Both central and local authorities were well prepared to receive the refugee. Even before the armed conflict, extensive preparation had been carried out in the light of the growing tensions. This is why Polish state was able to respond to their needs since the very outbreak of the war. We saw enormous mobilization of the Polish society as well. Thousands of citizens and institutions, including the Catholic Church, have offered shelters to their Ukrainian neighbors. The reception of such amount of refugees requires enormous efforts. Polish institutions and services operate in such a way as to secure the welfare of refugees, taking into account the specific needs of people arriving, including women and children, because women and children, and this is almost 90% of Ukrainian refugees coming to Poland, and they are also elderly and sick, to help them find a safe shelter. Why single problems and difficult situation may arise, at the same time, the services are taking all possible measures to ensure proper treatment to these people in need. Along with the ad hoc assistance, Polish state implemented systematic solutions. The law on assistance to Ukrainian citizens, which provides the legal basis to our actions, has recently entered into force. Frankly speaking, I'm proud of the attitude of my compatriots towards the Ukrainians, whom we will continue to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Valentin Angelov, chargé d'affaires for the Embassy of Bulgaria.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. My name is Valentin Angelov and I am Chargé d'Affaires of Bulgaria. After the start of this terrible war, civilians are paying the highest price of the illegal Russian military aggression on Ukraine. The war risks displacing millions of Ukrainians, which will lead to a sharp increase in humanitarian needs. European Union provided many different programs about helping humanitarian and many other. But this assistance is delivered throughout the United Nations agencies, non-government organizations, and International Committee of the Red Cross. Humanitarian convoys need a safe passage, and civilians must be allowed to leave the besieged cities in a safe way. Russia must allow our humanitarian partners to deliver this assistance to the people that are in the war zone. The Ukrainian authorities is already requested civil protection in kind assistance from the European Union. Already 29 countries, 27 member states, including Norway and Turkey, have made proposals of assistance via the mechanism of consisting of millions of items of medical equipment, first aid kits, fire equipment, water pumps, and power generators. We are standing ready to provide further measures of assistance via the civil protection mechanism. So far, Bulgaria has welcomed more than 70,000 refugees from Ukraine. Bulgaria urgently redirected of 185,000 euros of humanitarian aid through international organization on the ground. We are witnessing of unprecedented humanitarian mobilization of the entire Bulgarian society to help the refugees from Ukraine and in solidarity with Ukrainian people. The Bulgarian Red Cross collected more than 1.6 million euros in donation from the Bulgarian people. So far, 15 trucks with humanitarian aid of the Bulgarian Red Cross have been sent to Ukraine. We all understand the seriousness of that war and its consequences, so we want it to end as soon as possible. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Regina Wuttenberg, chargée d'affaires of the German embassy. Words are important. Russia deliberately spreads disinformation by using incorrect words, distorting facts, shifting blame on others, and blatantly lying. Part of this disinformation is Russia trying to influence the international discussion about what is happening in Ukraine by trying to control which words are used on it and which are not. We have to look at it and call it what it is, a war of aggression of one sovereign member of the United Nations on another sovereign member of the United Nations. Russia knows this. Russian representatives have even used called it a war during an official session of the OSCE. Not calling it a war is sugarcoating what is happening. Russia also spreads disinformation about the pretend causes for the war, referring to anything that happened in Ukraine as genocide, as a cause for an invasion, is absolutely inappropriate and unacceptable. There is a clear definition of genocide adopted by UN member states in 1948, which is, and I quote, "Genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. As such, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group, unquote. This has clearly not been the case in Ukraine, and that was established by independent international missions of UN and OSCE, as well as even Russian media. Using the word genocide as a justification for this war of aggression is an abuse of the word and an insult to all true victims of genocide worldwide. We categorically reject this shameful Russian attempt to confuse aggressors and victims in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. And I'm very pleased to be here and joining my colleagues from the European Union, the United States and Canada in condemning this appalling invasion of another country and the consequences that are flowing from that. As we've just been hearing, Russia is violating international law. Let's be clear about that. Russia is violating international law, international humanitarian law, and they are committing war crimes in Ukraine. And those who commit these attacks and offenses will be held accountable. Now, as you may know, the International Court of Justice made a ruling on the 16th of March. The vote was 13 votes. The judges voted by 13 votes to 2. The two countries which voted against were Russia and China. The ruling from the International Court of Justice was that Russia suspend immediately its military operations, which started on the 24th of February in Ukraine. Now, this order has binding effect, underline that word, binding effect on Russia under international law and the UN Charter. The court stated, again, really important to note this point, the court stated it did not have any evidence that substantiated Russia's claim that genocide was being committed in Ukraine. And as you all know, Russia, in their warped way, said the reason for their invasion of Ukraine was because genocide was taking place. Second important point, no country, Russia included, has any right under the Genocide Convention or the UN Charter to use unilateral force in the territory of another state for the purpose of preventing an alleged genocide. So the court's order is very clear that the court rejected Russia's justification for the invasion under international law. I repeat that again. The court rejected Russia's justification for the invasion under international law, to which Russia has to abide just like the rest of us. So when it comes to Putin's aggression against Ukraine and its people, not only has he lost morally, as we've already been hearing this morning, he's also losing legally and internationally. And we're working with all of our partners in the international community to make sure that good note is taken of this ruling by the ICJ and the right measures are taken to follow up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. So Catherine Ivkov, Ambassador of Canada.
Good morning. Thank you. Canada fully supports the statements made by my colleagues representing countries of the European Union, and I'm very pleased to be here this morning also with colleagues from the United Kingdom and the United States. Canada strongly condemns President Putin's unprovoked and unjustifiable invasion of Ukraine. President Putin has launched the largest military invasion of any European country since World War II. He has devastated peace and security in Europe. But this is not just an attack on Ukraine. This is an attack on international law, including the United Nations Charter as well as an attack on democracy, freedom, and human rights, fundamental values held dear by Canada, by all of the countries represented here today, and as we know very well, by our Mongolian partners and by the people of Mongolia. The consequences of Russia's actions will extend well beyond Ukraine's borders, and we know that this is already sadly the case. We recognize that there are major issues of disagreement between Russia and Ukraine, and deep historical ties that cross borders. But this is not unique to Russia and Ukraine. Many states share these challenges, but these challenges are not solved by the unilateral forcing of new borders along ethnic or cultural lines. They are not solved by the subjugation of smaller states to bigger ones. The brutal targeting of civilian infrastructure and the senseless death of innocent Ukrainians is immoral. The international community must be seized of this issue and condemn with one voice President Putin's aggressive actions. Canada stands very firmly with the government of Ukraine and its brave and resilient people. We have committed over $245 million in humanitarian assistance. Canada has also participated with other countries to refer matters in Ukraine, including the evidence and numerous allegations of the commission of serious international crimes to the International Criminal Court. There is mounting evidence of the commission in Ukraine by Russian forces of crimes against humanity and war crimes. Another serious issue unfolding because of Russia's war in Ukraine is an increase in global food insecurity. Already increasing in recent years, food insecurity will worsen due to President Putin's invasion of Ukraine. The war will disrupt cereal exports from Ukraine and potentially from Russia. Both countries represent a significant portion of world cereal exports. As the cost of food and fuel increases around the world, the humanitarian caseload will grow, with more people in more countries becoming acutely food insecure. As the impact on global food systems continues to be felt more strongly by the most vulnerable populations, including those already facing humanitarian crises, Canada continues to support humanitarian partners, such as the World Food Programme, to help meet emergency food and nutrition needs. Prior to the war, Ukraine was the world's 5th largest exporter of wheat. Much of Ukraine's export of wheat and other agricultural products were essential to the food security of many developing countries. The war has cut off that supply and increased prices and exacerbated food insecurity in many developing countries. 26 countries source over 50% of their wheat imports from Ukraine and Russia. Russia and Belarus are important exporters of fertilizers that many developing countries are highly reliant on. Disruptions in fertilizer supply and price increases threaten developing countries' agricultural productivity. We are well aware of Mongolia's reliance as well on some of these products. Canada will continue to closely monitor the impacts of Russian leadership's invasion on global food supply chains and work with partners to combat the negative effects on Canadians and on more vulnerable import-dependent countries. I will underline here that Canada is also affected by this situation, and for this reason, we monitor closely the impact on Mongolia as well. The World Food Programme, Canada's largest humanitarian partner, is critical to Canada's response to global food insecurity. In 2021, Canada was the 4th largest single country donor to the World Food Program, providing over $306 million in humanitarian funding to support its emergency operations across the globe. Thank you.
So first of all, thank you very, very much. You know, I've met many of you, or at least spoken with your outlets, media outlets. It's always a pleasure to do that. So I just wanted to be brief, and I think the US position is very clear. The reason I'm here is because I want to express particular support for the EU position and that of our like-minded colleagues. And it's similar to what we did, it was in late March, I guess the 25th of March, when the EU produced really what was an excellent letter about Ukraine. And we definitely endorsed that. I'm glad so many of you journalists are here though today, because it's just worth thinking about the fact that if we were in Russia, this could not happen, you know, because in Russia, there's a full assault by the government on things like media freedom, access to information, and I guess the bottom line, the truth, right? So Russia has attempted to block people from accessing Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, many Russian and international news sites, including some very strong independent ones, and even some mobile apps. And there is also a law passed by Russia recently, which threatens prison sentences for accurately reporting on Putin's war in Ukraine, invasion of Ukraine. So I just want to briefly say, repeat what I've been saying for a long time now, which is to say, this is a premeditated, unprovoked, unjustified, and brutal invasion of Ukraine. And as my German colleague said, words really do matter. And it has involved things like ceaseless bombardment of Ukraine's cities and critical infrastructure by Russian forces. It's created a huge humanitarian crisis, as we've been listening to, and credible evidence, extensive credible evidence of human rights atrocities. So really, Putin's war of choice, invasion, calls into question the security and prosperity, not just of Ukraine, but really for all countries on all issues, including sovereignty, territorial integrity of independent states, human rights, food security, many others, and you've been hearing about this. And I very much appreciate that you're all here to hear us out and to find out our position, which we are firmly convinced is a really devastating and horrific situation in Ukraine caused by a Russian invasion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you all for expressing your views. I think you have received, in a nutshell, the key topics that we wish to address to you. Now we will take a couple of questions. So thank you for introducing yourself and spelling out your question. Thank you.
За, иглэлцэн тамж гамбаяр байна. Тэгэхээр энэ Украины нөхцөл байдалтай холбоотойгоор би Европын холбооны удирдлага, за дээр нь энэ бас нөлөөхий гишүүн улсуудын элчин сайд нэрсэн байгаатай холбоотой эрчим хүчний
Халиу хүч болж байна уу? Халиу хүч болж байна уу? Бас шууд орчуулдаг.
Good. Okay. Sure. Игэл телевизийн
Сонсож байна.
Игэл телевизийн тамж Гамбаяр байна. За Европын холбооны элчин сайд за гишүүн улс орнуудын элчин сайднаас нэг асуулт. Эрчим хүчтэй холбоотой хоёрхан асуулт гэсэн. Эхнийх нь Европын улс орнууд Оросоос эрчим хүчний их үүсвэрийн хувьд их хамааралтай байна. Энийг бол энэ Украины дайн харууллаа. За өдөртөө бараг энэ барууны хэвлэлүүдийн бичиж байгаа бол 800 орчим сая еврог Орос руу төлбөр болгож шилжүүлж байна. Тэгэхээр энэ бол өөрөө Оросын энэ дайн цэргийн ажиллагааг санхүүжүүлэх том валютын нөөцийг бол Европын холбоо өөрөө өгж байгаа байхгүй юу. Тэгэхээр Европын холбоо ер нь эрчим хүчний энэ Оросоос хамааралтай байдлаар харилцахын тулд ямар арга хэмжээ төлөвлөж байгаа юм бэ? Танай улсуудын энэ эрчим хүчний хэрэгцээ нөхцөл байдалтай одоо яаж уялдах юм бэ гэдэг ийм асуулт их асууя. За хоёр дахь асуулт нь болохоор Монгол улс бол энэ Орос-Украины асуудлаар төвийг сэгсэн байр суурь баримталж байгаа. За нүүбийн тогтоол дээр бол энэ оролцоос түтгэлдсэн байгаа. Тэгэхээр та бүхэн сайн мэдж байгаа Монгол улс Оросын холбооноос засгийн газартай байгалийн хин хаалгыг Монголын нутаг дээгүүр дамжуулах ийм төслийг бол хэлцээд явж байгаа. Тэгэхээр ирээдүйд энэ төсөл хэрэгжих юм бол Европын холбооны зүгээс ямар реакц үзүүлэх юм бэ? Монголын төвийн сахин статустай холбоотойгоор Европын улс орнуудын зүгээс ямар нэгэн дарамт шахалт Монгол улсад ирэх үү гэдэг ийм хоёр асуултыг хэлсэн байна.
A few more questions, and then we will distribute between ourselves.
За эндээс асууч. Сайн байна уу? Би Монголын үндэсний олон нийтийн радио телевизийн гадаад мэдээний редактор байна. Хоёр асуулт байна. За нэг нь Гамбаярын асуулттай нэлээд төстэй, нэг дэх асуулт. За энэ бол Монгол улсын гадаад харилцааны яам Украины асуудалтай холбогдуулж албан ёсны байр суурь илэрхийлсэн. Өөрөөр хэлбэл Монгол улс бүх улс оронтой эрхтгш, тэнцвэртэй олон тулгууртай юм гадаад бодлого хэрэгжүүлдэг. Энэ бодлогынхаа хүрээнд Украины асуудал дээр Монгол улс бол нөхийг эрхэмлсэн ийм байр суурьтай байна гэдгийг илэрхийлсэн. Үүн дээр Европын холбооны гишүүн бүх улс орнууд болоод Европын холбооны түнш, тийм ээ, Канада, Америк нэгдсэн улсын байр суурь ямар байгааг та бүгдээс сонсё. Өөрөөр хэлбэл Украины асуудалтай холбогдуулж Монгол улсын засгийн газрын илэрхийлсэн байр суурийг та бүхэн юу гэж үзэж байгаа вэ? Нэгдүгээрт, хоёрдугаарт цаашид үр тарианы хомсдол үүссэн нөхцөлд Европын холбооны зүгээс болоод Европын холбооны түнш улс орнуудын хувьд Монгол улсад хэрхэн туслах вэ? Үүн дээр ер нь та бүхэн ямар төлөвлөгөөтэй байгаа вэ гэсэн хоёр асуулт байна. Баярлалаа.
За тэгэхээр 27 дугаар сугал визийн сэтгүүлч Бүтамж Мөнхтөл байна. Тэгэхээр Европын холбооны зүгээс яг хүнсний аюулгүй байдал дээр Монгол улс туслана гэж байна. Тэгэхээр далайд гарцгүй тэгээд тэр тусмаа Орос хятадгээд хоёр том гүрний дунд оршиж байгаа Монгол улсууд ер нь тусамж үзүүлэхэд бол энэ хоёр улсаар дамжиж одоо гарахаас өөр гарсан байхгүй. Тэгэхээр ямар нэгэн байдлаар одоо манай улсад ямар нэгэн эрсдэл учирлаа гэхэд одоо та бүхний зүгээс одоо тусламж одоо хангалттай байж чадах уу, аюулгүй байдал хангах тал дээр дэмжлэг байж чадах уу? Монгол улс бас энэ дээр бас Украины эсрэг яг төдөлгдсөн хариу өгсөн ч гэсэн яг үүндээ бол бас хоёр том гүрний дунд оршиж байгаа учраас жижиг улсын хувьд бас дөрвтэй эсэргүүцсэн байр суурийг хараахан илэрхийлэхэд бас хүндрэлтэй төр засгийн зүгээс ийм байдалтай байгаад байгааг та бүхэн ойлгож байгаа хаа. Нөгөө талаар бас өнөөдөр өглөө Финлянд, Швед гээд хоёр улсыг одоо НАТОд эсэхгүй байхыг Оросын холбооны улсаас бас хануулсан ийм мэдээлэл хийсэн байна. Тэгэхээр ер нь зүгээр энэ хоёр улс энэ хэрвээ НАТОд эсэх юм бол энэ дайны гал улам газар авахыг үгүйсэхгүй гэсэн асуудал байна. Энэ дээр ер нь энэ хоёр улс үнэхээр энэ НАТОд эсэхийн байр суурьтай байгаа мүү гүн мүү гэдэг дээр бас тодорхой хариулт авъя.
Okay, so we will start replying to this I will take the one regarding the assistance and mitigating the impact of the war in Mongolia. Ambassador Surin will reply on the energy. I will call maybe on the Ambassador Vitopil on NATO joining, if you're okay. So Ambassador Surin on the energy dependency.
Thank you. It is a very good point indeed. The energy dependency is very varied from one EU member to another, but altogether we are, as EU, still importing large quantities of energy from Russia. This is why we mentioned earlier that there would be a cost to the sanctions. There would be a cost for us to the positions we take, and we are ready to take that cost. In being less dependent from these sources of energy, in having alternative sources of energy. Some of them can be developed quickly. I'm thinking of renewables. The installed capacity of renewables energy is quite vast in the European Union. Nuclear energy is also one of our resources that can produce electricity without relying on any outside inputs, especially not from Russia. But yes, we have rather dramatic plans within this year, by the end of this year, to reduce our energy supplies from Russia. Gas is an issue, oil and coal. And as mentioned by Ambassador Nikkei's in the packages of sanctions, there has been decisions already on some of these sources of energy, and we are all working to be less and less dependent. And I think it's a very valid point also for Mongolia. As you mentioned, Mongolia is also dependent to some extent on Russia for its energy, and we feel there are resources within the country, starting with renewable energy. You might know that the potential of renewable energy in Mongolia is 2.6 terawatts. That's 2.6 thousand gigawatts, which is more or less the whole of the consumption of electricity in China today. The whole of China could have their electricity theoretically from renewables from Mongolia. So we believe renewable energy is in the mix of energy supplies, one of the major solutions for independence. And when I mention sovereignty, I also mention energy sovereignty for Mongolia. That is one of the things we're working on. Thank you.
Okay. Concerning the position of Mongolia, obviously, we have been collectively addressing a number of démarches to the Minister of Foreign Affairs here in Mongolia regarding two UN resolutions adopted at the General Assembly, one on condemning the war of aggression, a second one on the humanitarian situation. We had another démarche regarding the suspension of Russia from the Human Rights Council within the UN. We perfectly respect the position of Mongolia. We know the whereabouts, the location, and the concern of our host country. What matters to us is that in the adoption of those resolutions, we have only 4 countries that have voted against alongside Russia. So it means that diplomatically, internationally, Russia is isolated. Abstention is the expression of a neutrality, and we respect the position of Mongolia. Regarding our support, we are currently at the level of the European Union preparing our next programming of cooperation with Mongolia from 21 to 27. We had 2 key pillars, which are, I think, even more adapted given the current circumstance now. One is on green development. So anything that is supporting green transition, post-COVID-19 recovery, but also to decarbonize the economy, also in line with the commitment of the government regarding the reduction of greenhouse gas effect. So we are clearly aligned with the government of Mongolia when it goes to green transition and switching to green energies, because this is our target in the long term. Regarding economic diversification, this is the second pillar of our assistance. There will be, of course, a clear attention not only to the mitigation of the pandemic effect, but also the mitigation of the war impact that it will have and the sanction on the economy of Mongolia. So I cannot give you figures at the moment, but mitigating the impact will be clearly at the core of our intervention when we will be drafting our next programming. We will have to take this into account, and we will take it into account. Thank you. I will leave the floor to Jan Vitopil for new membership to NATO.
Thank you very much. And before I start with the NATO, I will just make some notes about the energy. As you know, Czech Republic, as some of our other colleagues here, have been members of the Soviet bloc 30 years ago. And it has been 30 years ago when we were since we have been trying to make our systems independent from Russia. We didn't complete this task completely, but we have been working on it for the last 30 years. Now we will hasten it. We will make it faster, but we were quite successful in getting connected through several sources during the last 30 years, through several sources of oil. We still have problems with gas. And just, I think, yesterday or 2 days ago, we have decided to start importing nuclear fuel from our Western partners. And our new nuclear power plants have been built already for the capacity to take the pellets, the nuclear pellets from any countries necessary. So that's about the nuclear on our side. As I mentioned, again, it has been the task for us for the last 30 years. As for NATO, if I remember correctly, all of us here are members of the NATO, as well as Czech Republic. And as you can see, NATO is an alliance of democratic countries. It's a democratic alliance which is serving for our defense. It's not an aggressive attack alliance. And any democratic country is fully entitled to apply for its membership. So we totally understand the feelings of Sweden and Finland. They are entitled to it. And in case it happens, please understand also it's provoked by the Russian aggression. NATO is the cornerstone of our defense. Without it, the defense of our territories would be very difficult. So please, again, NATO is very important for the European defense, and we understand the preoccupation of Finland and Sweden with regards to the Russian aggression. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can take a second round of questions if you still have appetite.
Бүгдээр өнөөдрийн мэнд хүргэе. Сэтгүүл зүйн наад хөгжлийн үүр төв тэгээд доороо бас Mongolian Fact Checking Center буюу Монголын анхны олон улсын баримт шалгалтын сүлжээний гишүүн баримт шалгах төвийг ажилуулдаг боловлоо гэж хүн байна. So the question I wanted to ask is about countering misinformation. Are there any plans to support works to counter foreign authoritative misinformation here in Mongolia? Because compared to other physical resources, information travels very fastly. Here at Mongolian Fact Checking Center, we started seeing misinformation coming from outside of Mongolia the night the war started in Ukraine. So it's very fast and we need to move very quickly. And for the past month and a half, we've been seeing our phones and computers not operating correctly. We are also a member of the International Fact Checking Network. So at the International Fact Checking Network, we're supporting our 2 fellow fact checkers working in Ukraine, some already misplaced. And we're trying to help them accelerate and intensify the information that they are fact checking. But in the past month and a half, we've been seeing our hands tied because we don't have enough resources. So I think it's very important at a time when we're already seeing some digital and national divide in terms of the information sphere here in Mongolia. I think it's very important for us to move very quickly. And also for the delegation, probably if it's possible to collaborate with domestic local media organizations and fact checkers like us to support Mongolian people with correct and accurate information. It will decide whether Mongolians will intensify information coming from Russia or any other country from the world. So thank you.
Thank you. Another question?
За сайн байна уу? Өдрийн санны сэтгүүлч Бацай байна. Тэгэхээр ер нь одоо ганцхан Оросын холбооны уусчлалтгүй ер нь дэлхийн одоо томоохон гүрнүүд ийм жижиг улс орнууд руу ийм төрөмгийлэл цаашид одоо гарахгүй байх тал дээр Европын холбоо хэрхэн анхаарч ажиллах вэ гэж нэгдүгээр асуулт асууя. Хоёрдугаар асуултын тухайд саяхан нөө дэлхийн уур амьсгалын өөрчлөлтөөр ер нь эрчим хүчийг нөгөө нүүрсний эрчим хүчнээс татгалзаад эко байдлаар тийм систем ашиглах тал дээр ингээд анхаарч ажиллана. Энэ талын санхүүжилтийг одоо хэрвээ нүүрсний эрчим хүчний технологид бол одоо санхүүжилтийг багасгана гэж ярьж байсан. Тэгэхээр манай орны хувьд бол одоогоор дандаа яг нөгөө нүүрсээр ажилладаг юм эрчим хүчний технологиг ашиглаж байна. Тэгэхээр цаашдаа одоо энэ нөгөө эко тим систем ашиглах тал дээр одоо энд байгаа улс орнуудаас тэгээ манай улс руу юм технологи одоо шилжүүлэх хэм зарах ийм боломж юу байгаа болов уу гэж.
Yes. Another question we can take. This information
Yes. My second question was related with proposed Russian gas pipeline through the territory of Mongolia. So, will be there any strong reaction from the European Union regarding this pipeline project?
Thank you. As most questions are related to the European Union position, please, colleagues, you jump anytime. On this information, I will just thank you for being that open and candid. Again, I very much value how much Mongolia is paying attention to freedom of speech, democracy, because this gathering today, as Ambassador Klishensky reminded us, is really a living proof that we live in a free, open, democratic country here. But democratic institution anywhere are at threat by under threat. I'm speaking about cybersecurity. This is a topic where we want to engage with Mongolia and work with Mongolia. We have already received a number of requests in that sense. This is an area, a topic where we want to engage more. On a daily basis, how do we counter disinformation? This is exactly what we are trying to do today, is to expose our view, but also as Regina, also from Germany, was explaining, how deep, how ingrained is the disinformation campaign from the Russian side. If you take in Europe, we have banned, it's completely unprecedented that we are banning channels, but we have banned already a couple of weeks ago Russia Today and Sputnik, because we view them as instruments of war propaganda, fueling hatred, and that is directly involved in this feeling, resentment of the Russian population towards Ukraine. And in Europe, in all our legislation, the limit of freedom of speech is incitement to racial or ethnic hatred. So there is also a limitation on what we can tolerate. But this exercise, to come back to Mongolia, yes, we are trying to have an open, a transparent, a clear and candid exchange, and you are on the front line as journalists, as free press, to relay these views to your public and the overall Mongolian population. So, and I'm very happy to engage more into this kind of exercise, and I'm sure that all the colleagues here are pretty much also engaged, their presence here. It's a living proof, I would say. There was a question also regarding aggression. If you take the convention, the Geneva Convention adopted in 1949, you have 3 categories of crime that were defined after the overall catastrophe of the Second World War. One, usually that we forget, is a crime against peace. You have 3 Geneva Conventions that were adopted in the same package: crime against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity that has been further developed in the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide of 1947 that Regina reminded to us. So this first convention that usually we forget, the war against peace, the crime against peace, is basically an act of aggression that is destabilizing, aggressing a sovereign independent nation, and that is part of the Geneva Convention. So that is the frame. That is the overall bill to which all countries, member of the United Nations, to which Russia is member, is also a permanent member of the Security Council, is part to. That's my reply regarding act of aggression on independent states. There was another question that is related to the transition, the decarbonization of the economy. This is something where both the EU, its member state, and Mongolia are pretty much alike. We wish to decarbonize the economy, and we wish to work on exchange of expertise and know-how. I was visiting last week. I was in Seychelles in a study tour to the wind farm, the solar farm. I see really excellent projects, huge potential in those areas in Mongolia when we can really work on solar energy, wind. I was very happy. The solar farm in Seychelles is not that huge. It's really an encouraging pilot project, and we have been told that it's covering 2% of the energy needs in wintertime and 3% of the energy of Mongolia in summertime. So this is a fraction. It doesn't mean that everything will be covered in the near future by wind or by solar, but this is definitely steps that we want to support further Mongolia. And no, there will be no sanction because Mongolia would have a pipeline crossing its territory. That is a free choice and independent nation, and we don't have any say on the matter. Thank you. If there are more topics you would like to bump it, maybe a last round of questions.
Монгол улсны шадар сайд Европын холбооны улс орнуудад одоо нөгөө дайныг дэмцэн байдалтай байр сууриа илэрхийлсэн оронд виз гаргахгүй байх асуудал яригдж байгаа юу? Одоо тухайлбал Монгол улсын шадар сайдын виз Герман улсад төлөхөд гараагүй гэсэн мэдээлэл цацгдсан бодтой болов визний тал дээр ямар байр суурьтай байгаа вэ?
Thank you. Other questions? Yes. Okay.
Maybe not. No, it's okay. Maybe not speaking for the whole European Union, but for the Czech Republic, we have already stopped visa applications to the Russian and Belarusian nationals in Mongolia around the world. So that's not possible anymore. On the contrary, we have reopened visa application for Mongolian nationals this last weekend. Yes, thank you. Because during the COVID pandemics, it was completely closed. Now we have reopened it for Mongolian nationals. Okay. Meanwhile, Belarusian and Russian nationals are closed.
Thank you, Jan. Indeed, visa is a competence, a national competence of our member states, but there is, of course, an impact with the sanction, especially for the people targeted. That comes without saying, as well as also the impact of the air carrier, including Aeroflot, that are not entitled to depart or to survey the European Union territory. So there is an impact, of course, on the traveling. But regarding visa, this depends on our member state, if not part of the package of sanctions targeting specifically individuals. I know that Ambassador of Canada wanted to elaborate further on disinformation. It is a very important topic. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much. We acknowledge also that the Russian regime has used disinformation to create a pretext for its illegal invasion of Ukraine and continues to manipulate information in an attempt to blur facts on the ground, to divide Ukrainians and its partners and allies, and also build support for Russia's actions. And these tactics, not only by seeking to undermine the truth of information that is disseminated around the world, is putting lives at risk on the ground in Ukraine. A couple of comments I would like to make are that, thankfully, since Mongolia is a free and democratic country with an open and free media space, there are many sources of information currently available to people in Mongolia, both on the radio, yes, the traditional radio, which some of you here in this room today represent, and also on the internet. And we know there are so many people in Mongolia who speak English, French, German, Czech, all of the languages represented by our countries here today. And there are very good information sources available to you on the internet or on the radio that you can access today. And it is important to search for those information sources. And this can be very helpful in ensuring that you are obtaining a balanced view and obtaining information from varied and trustworthy sources that will give you true objective information that is prepared by journalists like yourselves who are working in free and democratic countries and who are working with a level of professionalism to provide truthful information. So again, while the international community, including states represented here today, work together to challenge the disinformation that is being created by Russia, and we are working to counter that disinformation, there are still very good, trustworthy sources of information that are available to all of us that we can access here in Mongolia as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So, more questions? Yes, please.
Сайн байна уу? TV телевизэн сэтгүүлч Ариун Туяа байна. Европ холбооноос авч хэрэгжүүлж байгаа Орос улбаны улсын эсрэг хэрэгжүүлсэн 20 арга хэмжээний үр дүнг та бүхэн ер нь хэдийн хугацаанд гарна гэж итгэж хүлээж найдаж байна. За магадгүй энэ дайн яг энэ хэсчээрээ цаашид хэр удаан үргэлжлэх бол гэсэн таамагийг та бүхэн дэвшүүлж өгвөл энэ асуудлыг зорьсоор илэрхийлж байна.
Before we close the round of questions, on the sanction regime, we try to be as focused and targeted as possible. We have clearly in mind what we want is to nail down the war machine, both of the decider, those who are making the decision, basically the Kremlin, and also the economical elite, and to try to limit as much as possible this situation. It's a completely unprecedented package. We have already adopted a 5th package. I can give you all the details. I'm not going to give you here a lengthy list of what is aimed and what is addressed. We have a 6th package now that is currently under discussion, mainly targeting also coal and oil import. Gas import are more complicated and more sensitive in reason, of course, of our dependency on natural gas, but it's also part of the consideration. The 6th package is currently under negotiation, so it's not something I can disclose much at the moment, but we see clearly that there has been an impact on the ruble, on the economy, on the recession. And we try again to be as targeted as possible, but there is spillover effect, including on the European population. And we consider that is a price for freedom. Thank you.
Maybe I'll take the other question on when do we foresee the end of the war? If the Russian forces stop waging war, then it is over. So it's very much in the hands of the Russian government and the Russian regime to decide when they think the costs have been too high, the benefits have been non-existent, and it's time to end this war, which is absolutely senseless. So the question on when the war will end is, to a large extent, a question to be asked in Moscow. What we observe also is a very fierce and courageous resistance of Ukrainian forces and Ukrainian people altogether with our support. That is the only answer we can give to the question on timeline.
Speaking about sanctions, of course, it's obvious that the Russians army should not only stop fighting against Ukraine, but they should fully withdraw from Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. So, do you wish to elaborate further?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think just as some sort of a final thought here, as we've all explained here today, what Russia has done in Ukraine is completely acceptable. It's illegal. There's no justification for it whatsoever. But I think the questions about the information war are really important, and we need to sort of constantly be aware of the kind of misinformation that Russia is spreading. And we know that the Russian embassy here is engaged with journalists here and spreading their side of the story. So I think it's really incumbent on you as journalists to just look at both sides of the story, listen to both sides, and then provide a sort of objective analysis of what's happening in Ukraine right now. But to be clear, there is absolutely no justification for what's happening, despite what Russia says. There's simply no justification for what they have done. And I think what we're trying to do here is to make it very clear that point, and that we all need to look at the reality and report the facts truthfully. Thank you.
Once again, thank you for your presence. Thank you for your very active participation. We would be happy to repeat this kind of exercise with you whenever available or relevant. Again, it's our contribution, our effort to have a clear narrative. It's also a war of words, as Ambassador Malone reminded us. And thank you for keeping your objectivity, your professionalism, and I very much value your intervention and presence today. Thank you to all.